Donovan Mitchell could be on his way to New York. This isn't a surprise. Anybody that sits here today and thinks that Donovan Mitchell going to New York is a surprise, well, I don't know what you guys have been listening to. I don't know if you've been following Donovan Mitchell. He grew up a New York Knicks fan. He grew up in New York. He expected the Knicks to draft him when he was drafted at 13 by the Utah Jazz. They decided to go with Frank Ntilikina, who is now, who knows where? Dallas, where Jalen Brunson was, who now is with the New York Knicks. The interesting thing about Donovan Mitchell and this story is the fact that Danny Ainge, who can't stand the Knicks, can't stand any team that he is not running, and we have seen what he did with the Celtics, robbing the Brooklyn Nets and robbing many different teams, the LA Clippers over the years, taking away draft stock, making that Rudy Gobert trade just a couple of weeks ago, and really putting their team right there with a tremendous amount of draft stock, not only their own, but now draft stock from the Timberwolves. I am not surprised that the New York Knicks, and some of the stories coming out of the Utah Jazz, is they're trying to get as many draft picks as they can for Donovan Mitchell. And with some of the young players that the Knicks have, the Obi Toppins, the Quickleys, the Grimes, a lot of people thought the centerpiece of this trade would be Grimes. But I don't know if the Knicks are willing to trade him. And now we're hearing that it could be Obi Toppin, Quickley, and could be up to 5 first-round draft picks. Now, Donovan Mitchell, I believe, is a game changer. I don't know if it's going to help them win a championship because he is not the defensive player he once was coming out of college in Louisville. Brunson is not a defensive-minded type of player. He's more offensive-minded. So how are these guys going to fit in a Tom Thibodeau offense? But not only just that, the New York Knicks have been craving for a superstar since Carmelo Anthony. Nobody wants to come and play here in New York because the New York organization has not won. They have an owner that likes to spend, but also likes to open up their mouth. And when you look at both the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks, with Kyrie Irving and KD playing on the other side of the state, you would think that most players would want to play with them instead of going to New York and playing in Madison Square Garden in front of the world's greatest fans. Donovan Mitchell has come out and said that he cherished the opportunity to come here in New York and try to win a championship. This is not going to be easy. Danny Ainge is not going to make it easy. And the Knicks are going to be betting against themselves because Miami, they don't have the players and the draft stock to do it. And they don't have the salary, the cap over there to do it. Maybe it's Phoenix. Maybe it's one of these other teams. I don't know who is interested in making a move for Donovan Mitchell where you're going to have to trade away a ton of draft stock to get him. So I think the Knicks are betting against themselves. I think the Knicks are going to be bidding against themselves. They need to sit back and relax, let Leon Rose wait until Danny Ainge reaches out to them and practically begs them to take Donovan Mitchell. And that's where the Knicks put themselves in a very good position to get him at their own price.
Yeah, Utah is in an interesting position now where it seems like they're definitely now committing to the rebuild because Rudy Gobert, the trade that they made, Danny Ainge being stingy, getting 4 first-round picks and getting 2 good young players too. It seems like they're trying to build for that. I thought initially that maybe they wanted to win with those guys and the other veterans that are still pretty good on their roster, but still Donovan Mitchell now being asked to seek a trade. And those other teams that you mentioned are either one, more in the market for Kevin Durant, or 2, just too cash-strapped right now to be able to deal with that. I thought a while back that Atlanta was going to be the team that was going to go after Mitchell, but they went after DeJounte Murray instead. And now that leaves the Knicks really as the main team with, like you were saying, bidding against themselves and trying not to let Danny Ainge fleece them and take advantage of them because Leon Rose really hasn't done any kind of drastic move like this yet in terms of a big trade. He's a guy that was a former agent, not really any executive experience at that level. And now Danny Ainge, who's been in that business for a while, is going to try to fleece him. But it is encouraging that Quentin Grimes is not including in that trade because he was the guy that's been coveted around the league in so many other trades too. So the fact that they could get him for Quickley as being that guy in Toppin, who I don't really want them to trade, but for somebody like Donovan Mitchell definitely could be worth it if they don't have to trade Quentin Grimes as well. In terms of the fit for Donovan Mitchell, if he does become a Knick, yeah, there's definitely some questions with his defense the last couple years. Some of it I think is effort-based too because him and Gobert didn't get along. It definitely seemed like he quit certain moments of the playoffs last year, but I don't think he's necessarily unskilled defensively. He just fell off from where he was when he was drafted. Jalen Brunson, yes, definitely room to grow, but if Tom Thibodeau can groom RJ Barrett and Julius Randle and guys that weren't great defenders before that into good defenders the way they did in his system in 2020, who says they can't can't do it with these guys either.
And then there's the Brooklyn Nets, who are still trying to figure out what they're doing with KD and Kyrie. I have a feeling that these two guys are going to be there by the beginning of the season. Kyrie Irving, there's no way the Lakers are going to get unless they give up at least 2 first-round draft picks and maybe a player. They don't have any young players that really stand out because they traded them all away. They weren't into the rebuilding stages. They were into winning now. They won a championship in the COVID era and then haven't really done anything ever since. I think they're getting older. LeBron is looking on his way out of there when Bronny comes into the league, if he does come into the league. And I think their chances of winning another championship are starting to slimmer. But I think when you look at the Brooklyn Nets in the position that they're in, they got to really understand what they are and what they're going into next season. Now, if they keep KD and they keep Kyrie and now they have Ben Simmons at 100%, they could still compete against the more dominant forces in the Eastern Conference. And we talk about the Knicks if they had a Donovan Mitchell and Brunson. The Knicks, even though they probably have more depth and better depth than the Brooklyn Nets have the better of the 3 players. So a lot of people are going to look at KD and Kyrie and Ben Simmons as a trio that can dominate in the Eastern Conference. But I don't know if they all fit together. Obviously, Kyrie and KD have not fit together since they've gotten there. They can't stay healthy. They brought James Harden in, another superstar that they thought would fit and work with, like they did with OKC with Russell Westbrook. It didn't work. Harden is now gone. All 3 of them wanted to be gone. I don't know what this team is, and Sean Marks is really starting to itch his head and wonder where this organization and where this team is going to go. So if I'm sitting here today and I was a betting man, I would bet that KD, Ben Simmons, and Kyrie will be playing in Brooklyn by the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it seems like the Nets are really stuck right now just because of the conditions of so many different trade packages. DeAndre Ayton can't be traded now because he only signed an offer sheet matching this Pacers offer sheet last week, and so he can't be traded until January. And the Heat, same kind of thing with Tyler Hero right now as they try to negotiate a contract with him. He wants to be a starter. And I think as a result, the Nets, being that those are KD's 2 teams, are going to be stuck. Now also, the market is really showing that teams are concerned as well that Kevin Durant, 1, off the injury, and 2, struggling in the playoffs the way he did too, might be something that they might not want to trade that kind of price of what the Nets are offering, because we've seen the Nets go after the Suns, a lot of big trades with them already. The Timberwolves with a completely unrealistic trade package with Edwards and Towns for Kevin Durant. So teams are realizing, okay, if that's the price the Nets are going to want, if they're not willing to swoop down, we're not going to go trade for Kevin Durant. So as a result, the market is stalled. As far as Kyrie Irving, there's still some hope from the Lakers really, but that's really it at this point. The Spurs earlier in the week were mentioning that they would be interested in helping them facilitate a 3-way trade and take on Russell Westbrook's contract as well, to take on a couple of first-round picks from the Lakers in order to do that. But the Lakers are really running out of draft picks, and we know the Nets, they don't have any. They only have pick swaps at this point, so they don't have anything really to help with that. So they probably are going to be stuck with it at this point in the trade process. I feel like if the trade were to happen, especially with Kevin Durant, it would have happened already. So looming more and more likely that that's going to happen. So they're going to have to hope that these guys can run it back and go for kind of a throwback identity and run those stars, which isn't just winning with very little depth anymore.